How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 1.
Greetings, conversationalists. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the nation. I am delighted to have you with me today as the government shutdown rolls on. Republicans seem a little bit in disarray all of a sudden, and the Democrats appear to be united, but I have good sources on Capitol Hill and inside the White House and even among some of the Democrats. And I'm here to tell you the plot is thickening on Capitol Hill as the pain has started to be felt. So let's just take people traveling through airports. The slowdowns start today. The FAA warning that they will be reducing the number of air traffic controllers, but not just that, the number of TSA agents will also be reduced. So, when I travel through Atlanta, I go through a private terminal. I don't fly private. I wish. Fly Delta, but I go through a private terminal that has a TSA checkpoint inside that terminal, and they announced today that it is closing, and so you'll essentially be taken through the main terminal. Those people who are in the main terminal are going to see a reduced number of checkpoints at airports around the country. Hartsfield-Jackson, Two Dead Mayors International Airport in Atlanta, Georgia, the busiest airport in the nation, is going to start seeing reductions in traffic or TSA agents in their international terminal and their domestic terminal. Lines will build. New York as well. It's not a coincidence, I think, that Atlanta, John Ossoff is the senator who continues to vote to keep the government closed. So as you are going through the long lines at Two Dead Mayors International Airport in Atlanta, Georgia, you can blame John Ossoff for continuing to vote for the government shutdown. In New York, Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries are to blame, and the New York lines are going to get long. LAX, long. Chicago, long lines. It's not a coincidence. Not everything is political, but some things are. Where the TSA and FAA shorten operations has a lot to do with who's in charge in the Senate. And in a place like Georgia, New York, Chicago, Illinois, California, and San Francisco and LAX, you got Democrats in charge who are continuing to shut it down. So their constituents are going to feel the pain. Just as when Democrats were in charge and Republicans shut it down, Republican constituents felt the pain. Well, those of us in Georgia, we voted for Donald Trump. We've got Republican governments, but Ossoff and Warnock are in Washington. They keep voting to shut down the government. So their shutdown vote will cause long lines in the Atlanta airport, LaGuardia, JFK, O'Hare, LAX, San Francisco. You're all going to feel the pain. Well done, Democrats. Meanwhile, the Republicans are concerned that Donald Trump wants to cut a deal, and Donald Trump just might want to cut too good of a deal.
What kind of deal are you speaking
And I'm talking about good things with regard to health care.
Are you speaking with Democratic leaders? What kind of negotiations?
Well, I don't want to say that, but we are speaking with the Democrats, and some very good things could happen with respect to health care.
Would you make a deal with them on the ACA subsidies?
If we made the right deal, I'd make a deal, sure.
So you would make
I mean, you have right now subsidies. You have subsidies. That's the problem with Obamacare. The subsidies are so much. It's billions and billions of dollars is being wasted. And we could have a much better health care than we have right now. And we're talking to them. I mean, I'm not saying that's going to happen because this has also been going on, not for 3,000 years, but it's been going on for a long time. But, yeah, we're talking to the Democrats.
You would work to make a deal with them on...
I'd like to see a deal made for great health care. Yeah, I want to see great health. I'm a Republican, but I want to see health care much more so than the Democrats.
Now, therein lies the problem for the Republicans. They're actually more and more concerned that the president wants a bigger deal than the Republicans in Congress want to give the Democrats. And the Democrats in Washington expect the president will out-negotiate his Republican colleagues on a health care deal. They actually, the Democrats and Republicans both on Capitol Hill, think that Trump will give the Democrats much more of what they want than the GOP will. So Republican leaders on Capitol Hill, particularly in the Senate, have scrambled. Behind the scenes, they're working with a handful of Democrats, trying to persuade them to reopen the government. Here's the way the deal is going to work. Thus far, I'm told it is tentative, and it involves shutting out Chuck Schumer. Part of the reason for shutting out Chuck Schumer is because Schumer can't afford a deal. He could get primaried if he cuts a deal. After all, Schumer's one of the ones who says Trump's the second coming of Hitler. You can't fund Hitler. And it's got to be a clean continuing resolution that passes the Senate. It's got to be the House's resolution. Why? If the Senate makes any changes to the House's resolution, it goes back to the House. Any changes make it more difficult to get through the Republican House, and the Democrats in the House are refusing to vote for it because they don't want to be accused of having voted to fund ICE. They say the deportations and the like are Nazi-esque. They can't afford for this shutdown legislation to go back to the House. They've got to have the Senate do a clean resolution. So you've got a handful of Democrats. Jean Shaheen of New Hampshire is not running for re-election. She voted with the Republicans on the Lake and Riley Act. You've got Dick Durbin, who's not running for re-election, who has always been considered privately a little more moderate than his public prognostications. Mark Warner of Virginia, his voters, federal employees, are about to lose their jobs after tomorrow. By the way, Russ Vought has deleted from OMB guidance that furloughed employees will get back pay. They're not entitled to it necessarily. Congress would have to approve it. John Ossoff of Georgia is one of the Democrats who other Democrats say could potentially break with Chuck Schumer and vote to reopen the government. John Ossoff in Georgia has the most trafficked airport in the world, and it's starting to experience extreme slowdowns in security checkpoints by design. He has multiple military installations. He's got Fort Stewart. He's got Dobbins. He's got Robbins. I'm going to get a million people. I'm sorry. I got a lot of listeners, and it is because the name changed, and now they've changed the name back. Over in the Columbus area, you've got, what's the military installation, folks? Wait, don't text me, please. I know it's down there. It is the National Infantry Museum in Fort Benning. See, don't text me. Stop, Fort Benning. People are going to overwhelm me with text messages now. So you got Fort Benning, you got Fort Stewart, you got Robbins Air Base, you've got Dobbins Air Base, you've got the submarine base down in Kingsland, Georgia. You've got a lot of major military installations in the St. Mary's area along the coast. John Ossoff in a difficult position down there. So Democrats are expecting that you've already got Angus King and you got John Fetterman. You got to have 5 of them. So you have Fetterman, you have King already, you get Shaheen, you get Durbin. You might get Elise Slotkin from Michigan. You maybe John Ossoff. You might get Mark Warner from Virginia. That gives you 8, enough to offset the vote of Rand Paul, who's voting no because he doesn't think that the continuing resolution cuts enough. Suddenly, you got enough votes to reopen the government. In exchange, what you will get is Republican legislation authored in cooperation with these Democrats. See, it's designed if John Ossoff goes along with it so Ossoff can get some credit to campaign on. And Republicans still think they can beat him. But he's induced to sign on. And it'll be designed to extend health care benefits to American citizens. It will not fund illegal aliens, and will be clear that it doesn't fund illegal aliens. And the polling shows the Democrats and Republicans that it's a winning argument for the GOP if the Democrats insist on funding health care for illegal aliens. So these more moderate, supposedly Democrats, will reopen the government and stab Chuck Schumer in the back. Now, here's the issue. Schumer can't afford to go along with reopening the government with any sort of deal because, again, Trump is Hitler. We can't fund Hitler. Schumer backs the shutdown. So Schumer is even expecting these Democrats to work behind his back to get the government open and structure a health care deal that Schumer will then play a role in so he can take some credit. Here's a problem for Schumer. The progressive base, if they reopen the government and they let Hitler go back to Hitlering, they're going to want punishment for those Democrats who reopen the government. This is one of the wavering points on Jon Ossoff in Georgia because he's not going to be challenged by the left. But they may not do a lot to help him, and he needs their help, so he can't afford to completely alienate them. The rest of them don't care. Shaheen doesn't care. Durbin doesn't care. Several of the others don't care. So they open this up, and then they get a health care bill. And this is the problem for the GOP at this point. The Republicans are afraid that Donald Trump will give away everything. Donald Trump wants to go big or go home. The Republicans don't want to. Whatever is funded has to get through the House of Representatives. And the Republican leaders at this point are saying behind the scenes that they can risk alienating some of the House Freedom Caucus in exchange for Democrat votes. So it'll be a bipartisan health care measure. Now, this will alienate the far left in the House because they don't want any bipartisan measures. They want to be seen as fighting Donald Trump nonstop. The question, however, is when do they do it? And the speculation among Republican senators in the know is not until after October 18th. So you got another week and then some of the government being closed. October 18th is next Saturday. Republicans do not think that the government will open before next Saturday. Why? There's a massive, massive progressive protest scheduled to happen in Washington, D.C. And the thinking from Republicans on Capitol Hill is that if the Democrats were to open the government before October 18th, they will risk the fury of the progressive base. Here's Tom Cotton. He was on Fox News with Dana Perino.
Dana, the real world consequences are going to start piling up here.
Oh, the internet.
That'll help the Democrats come to their senses. As President Trump said, as Speaker Johnson and Senator Thune have said all along, there's nothing to negotiate until the Democrats vote to open the government. If they want to talk about giving taxpayer-funded health care to illegal aliens at that point, then they're certainly welcome to do so. But they need to open the government. You started to see some consequences yesterday with these air traffic delays out in California. Later this week, the Women, Infants, and Children's Nutritional Program is probably going to run out of money. That means poor moms with kids may not be able to buy milk and eggs and breads for their kids. We're going to have delays for civilian employees' paychecks later this week, then troop paychecks next week. These are all because the Democrats refuse to open the government, and then they can negotiate about health care, immigration, or anything else. And frankly, Dana, what we started hearing around the Senate yesterday is that there's a big left-wing rally in Washington, D.C. next Saturday, October 18th. And Chuck Schumer and the Democrats are so scared of their own radical left-wing base, they plan to keep the government shut until after that rally, and only then will they vote to keep the government open. They shouldn't be playing political games with nutrition for kids and our troops' pay. They should vote to open the government today.
That's Tom Cotton, senator from Arkansas. He's right, by the way. They are scared of the progressive base. I mean, these Democratic leaders have been telling the Democratic base that Donald Trump is the second coming of Hitler. And their solution is to fund Hitler as long as they can extend health care benefits. That's not much of a fight against Donald Trump when you think he's the second coming of Hitler. You can keep Hitlering, just give illegal aliens health care benefits. NPR, PBS, they're off the table. They're not going to be funded. Republicans are prepared to cut a deal on health care. Democrats not prepared to open the government before October 18th. Everyone tends to be in agreement that this is the state of play. It is subject to change at any moment. But the Republicans do expect that after you get through next Saturday's big progressive rally, you will see some of the Democrats come forward, willing at that point to reopen the government in exchange for a negotiated health care plan that they won't actually talk about negotiating until after October 18th, even though the framework is already being prepared at this moment. Boll & Branch kindly sent me a new set of king-size sheets, and I'm happy to get them, but I'll tell you the truth, I've already got Boll and Branch sheets that I've had for about a decade. They are so soft now. They haven't frayed. They haven't worn out. They've just gotten really soft. They're made of the highest quality, 100% organic cotton. They're very durable. And right now, they've got limited edition fall colors for a deeply comforting bedroom. And they come with a 30-night worry-free guarantee. And I'm telling you, the more you wash them, the softer they get, and they don't wear out. I've had my set of Boll and Branch sheets for almost a decade. You can start building your sanctuary of comfort this fall with Boll and Branch. For a limited time, get 20% off your first set of sheets plus free shipping at bollandbranch.com/Eric. That's Boll and Branch, BOLLAND branch.com/Eric, ERICK. Save 20%, unlock free shippings, exclusions apply, and you get those great fall colors right now. Welcome back. It's Eric Erickson. 877-973-7425 is the phone number. Can I just – so I had a lady on Twitter named Jennifer, won't give her last name, who lit me on fire because I said I did not care, couldn't care less about Bad Bunny at the Super Bowl. It was one of the wildest set yourself on fire exchanges I have actually encountered on my social media from somebody who she came unglued about Bad Bunny. And I bet most of you don't even know who Bad Bunny is. She says, I say, I couldn't care less about Bad Bunny at the Super Bowl. Of course you don't, because you only deal in the superficial. You, like David French, have no problem with institutions cramming crap down our throats because freedom or something you can't see, that it's our freedom to determine what's acceptable in society is being taken away. It's not about being exhausted. I'm not at all. It's as I said in my original reply, they force this evil crap down average Americans' throats instead of reading the room and realizing this is not what Americans want or see as good entertainment. Are you a citizen or a subject? Jennifer, calm down. Yeah, they're a private business, and you don't have to watch it. And last year's Kendrick Lamar halftime show generated more eyeballs than the football game itself. They're in it for ratings. I happen to know something about ratings. Thanks to my listeners in Atlanta, I'm told I am the most listened to radio program for the 25 to 54 set in the metro Atlanta area for the last quarter. Thank you very much. The advertisers want the 25 to 54 set. The businesses want the 18 to 24 set, because if you become a loyal member and when you're 18 to 24, you become a lifelong consumer of the product. The NFL's trying to get the 18-year-olds in. You know who the most streamed person is on Apple Music and Spotify right now? Taylor Swift. That's who they wanted. You know who number 2 is on Apple Music and Spotify right now? Bad Bunny. He's also a WWE wrestler. From 2020 to 2023, he was the most streamed artist on streaming products. This isn't about you or me or Donald Trump. It's about they want the ratings he might bring to the halftime show so they can make big money. But you do you, people who just are convinced. Both sides are great at imputing motives on the other. Between bank collapses and the economy right now, Swiss America has been warning people about a secret war on cash for some time. They would like to help you protect your hard-earned assets, and you can get their help and their free report on the secret war on cash. It takes less than 15 minutes to read, and it can save on your retirement and finances. All you have to do is call or text them at 800-289-2646. The All-Out War on Cash includes digital forms of currency, and it is growing. So get and read the Secret War on Cash report completely free. All you have to do is mention Eric, E-R-I-C-K, when you call or text 800-289-2646. That's 800-289-2646. You can also go to SwissAmerica.com/Eric. That's SwissAmerica.com/ERICK, or call or text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 800-289-2646. Get this report completely free from Swiss America. Message and data rates may apply. In business, they say you can have better, cheaper, or faster, but you can only pick two. What if you could have all three at the same time? That's exactly what Cohere, Thomson Reuters, and Specialized Bikes have since they've upgraded to the next generation of the cloud. Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, OCI is the blazing fast platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs, where you can run any workload in a high availability, consistently high performance environment and spend less than you would with other clouds. How's it faster? OCI's block storage gives you more operations per second. Cheaper? OCI costs up to 50% less for compute, 70% less for storage, and 80% less for networking. Better? In test after test, OCI customers report lower latency and higher bandwidth versus other clouds. This is the cloud built for AI and for all your biggest workloads. Right now, with zero commitment, try OCI for free. Head to oracle.com/Erickson, ERICKSON. That's oracle.com/Erickson. Hello there. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the nation. Some real talk now. Today is the second anniversary of the mass murder committed on October 7th with Hamas's invasion of Israel. 1,200 Israeli citizens killed. Let's not dance around the fact that though they have screamed about it and denied it, we actually do know they even throw a baby in an oven and baked the baby to death. They raped women so violently and aggressively that they were turned inside out. They beheaded people. They did horrible things. And today, around this country on college campuses, are Palestinian bake sales to protest Israel. That should tell you the level of evil that we are dealing with, the depravity and the evil, the unwillingness to recognize, to admit what happened in Israel. All the people who have screamed genocide for the last few months in Gaza are stunningly silent when it comes to getting Hamas to take a peace deal. They would rather the genocide continue, apparently, than have Hamas disarm. Tells you everything you need to know. The PR operation of the pro-Hamasnik crowd is remarkable to behold. I actually am genuinely impressed with their ability to get major newsrooms around the world to run falsehoods and only later retract them after people have gotten killed, incited by the falsehoods. Let's not forget the attack in Boulder, Colorado, several attacks in Europe, the killings of the 2 embassy employees in Washington, D.C., et cetera, all coming after the media reported false, salacious, disturbing stories about what Israel had done, only to retract them later. Israel is the only nation on planet Earth that, when attacked, is not allowed to beat its opponent. They can only have a truce. They have conducted themselves and their operations against Hamas far more civilly than the Western world did in World War II, than we did in Iraq and Afghanistan. The ratio of civilians to terrorists killed, far, far lower. But it's not enough for the people who hate Israel. 2 years ago today, Hamas, using paragliders in a staging of an attack that had not been seen before, the Israelis having rested on their technology and their laurels to do underground detection of the tunnels and the like, never saw it coming. Concert for peace happening in Israel, Hamas went to, killing a lot of the people there. Going into communities in southern Israel near the border in Gaza, murdering men and women and children, watching children, making children watch their parents being murdered before carrying the children off, babies in some cases being taken back to Gaza, killed in captivity, hundreds taken hostage. Very few of them remain alive, and a lot of them, they're still hostages. 2 years later, they're still hostages. Many of those hostages are dead. Hamas keeping the bodies, refusing to give the bodies back. Israel didn't start this. Hamas started this. I was asked the other day if I could repeat something I said on the radio, and rarely do I humor someone. I tell them to get the podcast or whatnot, but I know how radio is. People flown in and out. You got a busy schedule. You're stuck in your car right now in traffic. I said it in the third hour. Some of the stations that carry us live, they don't carry the third hour. They move to local programming. So I want to reiterate this. Someone the other day called in and said, why this anti-Semitism? And I want to add to what I said. But let's start at the beginning. The Old Testament of the Bible is not just a theological work, it's also a historic work. Many of the things that are written about in Chronicles and the Book of Kings have now been documented by archaeologists. For example, there's a throwaway passage in the Old Testament about King Hezekiah. And there was in Bethel, which was a part of Israel that turned pagan, and they worship Baal, the pagan god of several of the tribes. Hezekiah marched up there, destroyed the altars of Baal, and converted the area into public urinals and put his seal where the urinals were, that the altars to the pagan gods could not be rebuilt. And within the last 10 years, that little throwaway story, they have found the smashed altars of Baal and the seal of Hezekiah on the public restrooms in Bethel. So you don't have to take my word for it. Look it up yourself. It's true. They found it. We know that there were a bunch of individual tribes in the Canaanite region, and that when the Israelites got out of Egypt, they were a force to be reckoned with, and they went in, crossed the Jordan River. They pushed out the other tribes, and they took the land 4,000 years ago or so. And having set up shop in the land of Canaan, they formed a kingdom, the kingdom of David. It split into two, the northern kingdom, the southern kingdom, and all the archaeology matches up and attests to this. In 70 AD, the Romans, having given the Jews special exemptions, punished the Jews and purged them from Jerusalem and tore down their temple because they were constantly rebellious. The Romans were a polytheistic society, and they gave the Jews and only the Jews a special exemption that protected the Jews from having to worship or make sacrifices to the emperors and the gods. The Romans believed that a god could not be alive. A god had to be a dead thing. And so when the emperors died, they were treated as gods, and you made sacrifices to the emperors, now gods. That's why the Romans thought the Christians were atheists, because they claimed to worship a living person. And the Romans said, you can't. All gods are dead. And here come the Christians saying, no, this Jesus guy came back from the dead. They're like, well, then he can't be a god. So he came back from the dead, but he can't be a god. The other gods kicked him out. He can't be a god. You're an atheist. Well, the Christians at first were considered to be a subsect of the Jews and were allowed under the exemptions of the Jews to continue to worship. But the Jews got tired of the Christians trying to convert people in the synagogues to Christianity. You can read about this in Acts in the New Testament, which is also history. And they pushed them out of the synagogues and told the Romans, these people are not us. They're not Jews. They're something else. They practice something called the way. The way is not our way. They were eventually called Christians by the Romans. When the Roman Empire converted to Christianity, many of the Christians who were the descendants of those persecuted and some killed still nursed grievances against the Jews and blamed the Jews for their persecution. By that point, the Jews had been kicked out of Jerusalem. And in, I want to say, 138 or 150 AD, the Emperor Hadrian, who built the wall between Scotland and England, he got tired of the constant Jewish rebellion. They destroyed the temple in 70 AD, and the Jews still couldn't take a clue. So he went into Israel, changed the name from Judea to Palestine, and kicked all the Jews out of it. They were barred from living in Judea at all. They were dispersed around the Roman Empire, except Judea. When that happened, a variety of Arab tribes moved in. Not the descendants of the Ammonites and the Moabites and the Edomites, new tribes. Most of those no longer existed. And together, collectively, those individual tribes began to be referred to as the what? Palestinians. They took the Jewish land. When the Roman Empire converted to Christianity, the Jews were blamed for killing Christ, although the Bible makes clear everybody's to be blamed. The Christians still smiting from having been thrown out of the synagogues in the 70 AD period, blamed the Jews, and they began to make the Jews do things the Christians and Jews together believed were sin. Christians couldn't act because acting was lying, and so they made the Jews be the actors. Christians weren't allowed to lend money. They believed it was sinful, so they made the Jews lend the money. Guess what the Jews got really good at? Entertainment and money. In the Middle Age, a lot of the guilds would not allow Jews to be a part of it. So Jews had to go out and figure out their own things, and then they had to lend the money to the guilds. And they became more and more prosperous. All the while, they began moving back to the land that was now called Palestine. Fast forward to the 1900s, Jews have become fairly wealthy because the Europeans made them all become the bankers because banking and lending money were sins. And the Europeans were mismanaging their countries, but they couldn't admit to their own mismanagement, so they had to blame someone. So they said, look at all these wealthy Jews who are controlling all the banks. It must be their fault. And the 20th century persecution of the Jews ramped up. And by the time Hitler came along, the German economy was in tatters after World War I. He couldn't get it fixed. And instead of admitting he was incapable of fixing it, he said, that's the Jews' fault. Let's kill him. After World War II, they were allowed to go back to the land that the archaeologists all agreed was their promised land, their holy land. Many of them had already started repatriating. The Ottoman Empire allowed them, suffering some level of persecution, to camp out in the Holy Land period even before World War I. And in 1946, with the rise of the United Nations, it was agreed by the world, given what had happened to the Jews in the Holocaust, they could have their own land. And the only people who didn't like it were the Arabs, and the Arabs tried to stamp them out, and instead the Jews won and expanded their territory. And ever since, the Arabs have pretended to be the victims. But you know what the Arabs don't like? What they hate even more than the Jews? Arabs hate Palestinians. The Palestinians have been labeled refugees because none of the Arab kingdoms that allowed them to come in while they attempted to exterminate Israel wanted them to be citizens or wanted them to be permanent residents, and they forced them back on the Israelis after those people had fled Israel so the Arabs could wipe out Israel. They lost the war, and the Arabs were like, well, you got to take back the Palestinians now. We don't like them either. And they settled in Gaza and the West Bank, and Israel has slowly taken more territory over time. And the Palestinians have themselves to blame, not Israel. But they fester and foster anti-Semitism because it's far easier to blame the Jews than it is to accept your own problems. But here we are now in the 21st century, and you have Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson and all these other people online who seem to love blaming the Jews for everything. And you know who they're not mentioning in all of this? China. Do you know on October 7th, 2 years ago, shortly after the attack on Israel began, suddenly a massive amount of anti-Semitic propaganda started appearing on TikTok? The Chinese changed the algorithm and amplified the anti-Semitic message on TikTok. It's no wonder these people who exist for clicks started going anti-Semitic. It's how they get a lot of traffic on TikTok. The Chinese induced the anti-Semitism, and you will note all of the people on social media and elsewhere who are blaming the Jews for Charlie Kirk's assassination, for controlling the United States, for all these other things. None of them are mentioning China. China is amplifying their comments through its TikTok algorithm, giving greater traffic to the people who go full-bore anti-Semitic, and in the process, none of them mention China controlling the algorithm. None of them mention the Chinese spying. None of them mention China. You got a number of people saying, oh, these people are funded by Qatar. These people are funded by Qatar. Some of them probably are funded by Qatar, but they benefit by China. China is spreading the anti-Semitic rhetoric because none of these people are talking about China, and the people who are upset about the anti-Semitism are also focused on the anti-Semitism. They're not focused on China. So China's winning with both sides focusing on each other while China is playing them masterfully. China has a lot to do with the festering anti-Semitism right now because China, like the Nazis before them, they need a scapegoat to distract you from what China is doing. The Jews are not the bad guys in the fight. The bad guys are Hamas and the Chinese and the people who would blame Israel and the Jews. And I would just note one more time for the record that the President of the United States has presented a proposal to Hamas to release all the hostages from Israel. And Hamas's counter is that Israel will have to release all the murderers who murdered the people on October 7th. Kind of a deal breaker. We'll give you back your dead bodies, but you've got to give us the people who caused them to die. Kind of a deal breaker. Hamas is not serious about a deal. We should wipe them from the planet. And you should note again, all the people who are screaming about genocide are not demanding that Hamas give up the hostages. They'd rather apparently the genocide to continue. Why is that? Perhaps it's because there never was a genocide, but Hamas needs to be wiped out. Greetings and welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. I got to play you this from Pam Bondi testifying in the United States Senate. Had this exchange with Amy Klobuchar, Democrat from Minnesota.
Senator Klobuchar, I'm not going to discuss personnel decisions, but the personnel issue that I'm having right now is that all of my agents, all of my lawyers are working. My agents are on the street working without a paycheck because your party voted to shut down the federal government.
Oh, good for her. Good for her. Actually, some very interesting testimony from Bondi today, who even people like me who have criticized her management within the Department of Justice are impressed with her ability to fight back on the Democrats. By the way, I got to note this story. Paul Feinbaum, the sports radio and TV broadcaster, did an interview with Clay Travis, who is persona non grata at ESPN, and Feinbaum announced he was considering a run for the Senate in Alabama. I don't know that he actually will, but he was looking at it. ESPN took him off the air afterwards, not apparently because he was considering a political run, but because he did an interview with Clay Travis. Bobby Brack, who works with Clay Travis at Outkick, noted that they took him off the air for doing a interview with Clay Travis, but they've left on Mark Jones, who tweeted the day she died, Queen Elizabeth was a racist, tweeted out a progressive bishop calling white people demonic forces of evil, claimed that white people appropriated Jesus, accused Aaron Rodgers of being a member of QAnon, and Ron DeSantis, a member of the KKK, claimed that Batman was rooted in racism. They leave that guy on, but they took off Paul Feinbaum for the audacity of being interviewed by Clay Travis. Is there any reason to wonder why their ratings are down? They got some great people there. Peter Burns, Dan Orlovsky, a lot of them, but man, what a difficult place to have to work. Now, your computer might be difficult for you to work with it, and Vision Computer can make it easy for you. If you call them at 404-COMPUTE and tell them Eric sent you, you might even save some more money, or go to visioncomputers.com. Anybody nationwide, even those of you listening up in Anchorage, Alaska, you can call Vision Computer and they can take care of your computer needs. They can upgrade your existing computer. They can build you a brand new computer, and they can be managed IT for your company. If you can't afford to have the six-figured in-house salaried person always taking care of computers, well, with Vision, you get real people, not AI. Your employees call a phone number, and faster than a Google search, 15 seconds or less, they get somebody on the phone to help them with their computer. So you have increased uptime, decreased downtime. You're much more profitable as a business because of it. Your employees are great at their jobs, not at their computers. They let Vision Computer take care of that. And by the way, right now, if you're on Windows 10, Windows has announced October 14th, they're stopping security updates. So you need to get upgraded, and Vision Computer can help you with that as well. Call them at 404-COMPUTE or go to visioncomputers.com. 404-COMPUTE, visioncomputers.com.